I think people may keep trickling in, but I don't want to keep us held up. We have a lot of stuff to cover, and we want to definitely make sure we've got extra time set aside. Just a quick note here. This webinar is being sponsored by Engaged Agility. You see that Initiate AI, that's not a separate company. It's actually another brand underneath the Engaged Agility umbrella. So if you see that, it's just kind of a way to Engage Agility focusing in on the AI component. So it's a separate brand underneath the single company. So we've got a hand raised. I'm not sure if I've got the ability to call on people openly here in this size, given the size of the webinar. We do have a spot for Q&A. I will not be monitoring chat for questions. So chat is for chatter. If you've got a question, please put it in through the official Q&A panel. I am monitoring that, and we will get those questions either answered in line or answered in the Q&A section we'll have at the end. So a little bit about this webinar, right? Scaled Agile is invested in AI, in this AI native training. It's some great stuff. We'll talk more about it at the end, but ultimately, this is about building that AI native advantage, moving away from simply saying, yeah, we've got some AI, or we've got Copilot, things like that. How do we move from that curiosity space into actually building the capability to get something done? As we go through this, you're going to understand and discover why AI fluency, not hype, is kind of the key to sustainable adoption. We're going to talk about the 7 AI native success factors that really kind of help you turn these ideas into actual value. And then finally, Steve's going to end us with a readiness framework, some things to think about as you move forward. And then we'll wrap it up from there with the Q&A and everything. A little bit about myself. I'm Phil Gardner. I'm a SAFE fellow, SPCT. My SPCT is associated here with Engaged Agility. I consider myself to be a strategic advisor, more so than an agile coach. I've been involved in SAFE since 2013. With me is the esteemed Dr. Steve Maynard. I had the honor of having him as my mentor through the SPCT program. I met Steve years ago when he was bringing SAFE to the government in 2017, 2018, so early on. And as a contributor, of the SAFE community, being able to work with Scaled Agile, I was able to be involved early on with Steve's great work on leading in the digital age and all of the research he did there. And then, for several years now, he's been the chief AI person at Scaled Agile. And when we think about Steve, just a little bit about him, right? He's Scaled Agile's AI strategist, and he's been involved in the Scaled Agile ecosystem for 12 years, and of that, almost a decade as an employee with Scaled Agile. Inside Scaled Agile, there's a group of men and women called the Framework Team. These are the men and women that do the research and create the frameworks, write the framework, if you will. And Steve's been on that team for 8 years. He's recently taken a role as the VP of AI methodologies for Scaled Agile, and he has a new team focused on this. Anything you'd want to add to that, Steve?
No, Phil, I think you made me blush enough. So we'll just say thank you for inviting me. Thanks to everybody that's joined today, and I look forward to our conversation.
Awesome. So we're gonna hear this term AI native, and we'll be really kind of exploring what that actually means. And leaders everywhere are asking that question: how do we move from, we've got AI and we've invested in this, we've invested in that. Steve will bring in a couple examples from his experience. For me, my clients, I do more of my type of consulting is a bucket of hours here, a workshop there, a retainer over here. So not deep embedded in one customer. I'm seeing dozens of customers that I'm working with, and definitely AI has been a major thing for the last 2+ years. What we're seeing now is a split between the laggards and the ones that, in my opinion, are going to do well in the future. And we'll talk more about that as we get into the AI native enterprise and things like that. So just starting out here, this idea of the proof of concept graveyard. By the way, these numbers are aggregate. If you have not read the framework, Steve and his team's white paper on being AI native, definitely would recommend that. You can download that from the Scaled Agile framework site. And I'll look at, when Steve's talking, I'll look at digging up the URL and popping it into chat for you. This idea of these projects fail, they're disconnected from the business outcome, right? And we're still even in the portfolio management space, we're still seeing a disconnection between, this idea of projects that no one's really checking out. If you know me, I'm really passionate about strategic portfolio management, lean portfolio management. And what we're seeing there is these projects just flowing through. But we've all seen it where, what are the business outcomes that we've actually have here? And so we do these things, maybe they're technology focused, and they aren't connected to the business outcomes. And so we have these pilots everywhere, and there's not any kind of strategic coordination. So if you're already in a situation where you're growing from a portfolio management perspective, you haven't quite made that shift from projects to opportunities, so to speak, as I like to say, then you're definitely this is gonna amplify. And it's not a problem that it's gonna get better over time, it's gonna get worse. Anything you'd add to this, Steve?
I would just add that I would encourage everybody, if you're not already doing so, to plug into the regular news feeds and sources for this kind of research that's going on, because as we'll talk about more in a minute, this is a very fast moving, fast evolving domain. And so, there are many organizations out there, the universities, MIT, Harvard, the big consulting shops, companies like Gartner. They're just trying to constantly see what's going on out there and report that back out to us. So to stay tuned to that, because when you look across them collectively, they do paint a picture. And that picture is what we're going to double click into for the rest of this webinar. What's happening? What is it telling us? And what do we do about it individually as professionals and as organizations as well, to decide how are we going to respond to this new thing called AI.
Awesome. And it's coming, it's here, right? I mean, we've seen this slide in some of the SAFe training materials, but help us understand a little bit here.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago at the SAFe Summit in Berlin, I did a keynote with Dr. Mick Kirsten. Many of you know that name from Project to Product. And we did a version of this, and we posited and hypothesized, could this be that the explosion of AI into our collective business conscience, starting in November of 22 with the public release of ChatGPT and everything that's happened since, has that actually in fact ushered in our next technological revolution? I think we'll know more when we look back with perspective in time. But we see a lot of patterns. And one of those patterns, if you look at Carlota Perez's work in the installation period of these technological revolutions, is when it first happens, you have this explosion of startups, right? Everybody wants to take advantage of this new invention. We've certainly seen that with generative AI coming into our landscape. And then we have some consolidation, and then we get big players. And what's interesting is that if you look at the time windows, that usually takes a long period of time to go from many, many players to we consolidate around a small number of big players. Look at the announcement from OpenAI's dev event last week, where there is a fully a graphically enabled agent building capability in their product now. What does that indicate for all the little startups? The Flowwises, the N8Ns, those out there that had that capability, and now the big behemoth OpenAI has built it into their product. That's the pattern that we've seen in every one of these technological revolutions that indicates we're moving into the turning point and deployment period. What we have to watch is, could AI be introducing an acceleration of this pattern so that we move through these stages faster than we've ever seen in human history? We don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely going to have implications for us in our business. So it's something to watch.
Absolutely. So this concept of edge definitely is a core one, Steve.
Yeah. So as we did our research and started this journey of what are the challenges our customers are facing, what's unique about AI that might be different than other types of transformations companies have gone through in the past, and how do we take that learning to inform how can we help just like we've always done as a company. One of the things that have emerged from that research is over time there have been many different models, whether it's VUCA, whether it's even Porter's five forces, ways to think about what's going on in the external environment that impacts how our organizations develop strategy, develop products, manage dealing with the competition, all of these sorts of factors. One of the things we are observing about AI is it's created a new set of things that are truly different or are exponentially more amplified than other revolutions in the past. And just very quickly, these are the four things that we see in research occurring over and over again. One, AI is exponential. It's moving at a pace that is unlike anything that we've ever seen. We had some meetings this morning, and I told folks, the window that I'm willing to plan our roadmap is significantly shorter than we've ever been able to do, because I can't. The world can be so different beyond that time horizon that planning beyond it is just going to be a waste of time. We used to have 5-year plans, and then 3-year plans, and then 2-year plans. Now we're talking in months is the most that we can plan, because that's the way the speed of this is so different than anything we've ever seen. The good news is, yeah, that's great. I mean, that creates new opportunity. We can build new things. We can deliver new value. We can capture new markets. We can create new markets. That's the good part. The downside, if you look below that, is it's also enabling massive disruption. And so with every new capability that comes out, not only can you take advantage of it, but so can your competitors. At the same time that I was, go back to that, the OpenAI example. Even our company built some things into our courseware built around one of these third-party tools around building AI agents. Well, now here comes OpenAI, and they changed the game overnight. So what do we do as a company? Do we go back and change our course? Do we switch? I mean, that creates a disruptive moment that we have to make business decisions that we weren't planning on making a week ago, right? So that's what we're really talking about. This is a characteristic. On the other side, generative. AI is amazing. Unlike any other software we've done in the past, it actually creates. It creates things that we weren't expecting. I work out every morning to Sadie Winter's music. Sadie is awesome. Sadie is also not a real human being. She's completely AI generated, as are the music and lyrics of her songs, but they're wonderful, and I love them. We've never had software do that before, but now we do. And so what does that mean? And that's fantastic. It creates opportunities. The downside is this emergent nature of AI doing things that are unpredictable creates risk, creates things we have to manage we've never had to manage before. So the combination of these four factors create an entirely different landscape that our businesses have to deal with. And so as we go through the IP that we're developing, the guidance, the training, we want to support organizations who are having to navigate this edge world that we now find ourselves in, thanks to the technology. So you want to go ahead and flip the slide there. So what is our answer? Our answer, and we're not the only ones to use this terminology, although a lot of people use the phrase AI native. Other organizations will use the term AI first. They're kind of meaning the same or similar things. And that is, we have to change how we think, how we operate individually and as an organization to develop our own mastery of the technology, and then have a mindset shift of thinking of AI as our partner, as our ability to augment and amplify what we're able to do, and think of that as a natural. We just look at the world differently. I shared when I did a training at Summit 3 or 4 weeks ago, that as I've been seeing my own AI journey over the last 4 or 5 years, I can't even tell you when it happened, but somewhere along the way, my mind flipped a switch. And I don't have to stop and in the front of my brain think about, oh, gee, maybe I ought to try using AI for this. Now it's in the back of my brain, and my subconscious just naturally integrates AI into even the most menial things in my everyday personal life, as well as my professional life. So that's what we're really talking about, the shift individually and as organizations into this AI native approach. And that's what prepares us to deal with and leverage to our own success these four forces. Next slide. So what does that mean for an organization? So we need to do some things as an organization to take advantage of the technology, to understand its unique capabilities and its unique risks, and become successful with it. And there are many organizations, we're starting to see the case studies come out where they're doing phenomenal things with this. They've navigated edge successfully, and they've done everything that you've seen on this slide. And I will go into great detail. This was presented by our Chief Product Officer and Chief Methodologist, Andrew Sales, at Summit 4 weeks ago. You can get access to that if you're already a member in Studio. If you're not, for a truly small fee, you can get access now, and then early next year it'll be open to the public to get the deeper dive into this. But these are the kinds of things that organizations need to focus on in terms of building their capabilities to be successful as an AI native organization, from aligning to business strategy, clear vision, understanding what the economics are, and not just let's just do something AI. That's probably not going to turn out well. Upskilling your workforce, understanding the governance and ethics that need to be in place to manage these unique risks that AI brings, and to also have a set of metrics around how we're going to measure success, making sure we got the data that's ready and that we've got the technological infrastructure, all by understanding we have to do this while keeping AI human-centric, right? It serves us, we don't serve it. And that agility remains a foundational capability. If you can't move fast as an organization, you're sunk when it comes to AI. So that's a very fast run through of what our view is from what we've learned, both from research and talking to organizations that are doing it well, of what it takes to be successful. So Phil, I think it's back to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was trying to answer a question. I don't know if you know this answer to this one, Steve, but for Andy's keynote, is the PDF, if somebody has access to the recordings, is his presentation, the PDF for his presentation, downloadable as well?
There should be a PDF. It won't, not the slides in PowerPoint form, but we should have for all of our talks at Summit, they have the PDFs attached. The only time we don't do that is if it's an external speaker that doesn't permit that for some reason.
Yes. Okay. So the PDFs are available via the Summit recordings. So we talk about AI native, we talked about the enterprise, we talked about the organization. Now we look at the professional. And the idea here is that we as individuals have to embrace this ourselves. And, it's funny, when I've been involved in AI probably for about 3 years now. For me, I had a wake-up call this spring, and I reached out to Steve afterwards. I went back to where I started from a SAFE perspective at the chief data office at AT&T. And they were still using the same stuff that we started in 2013, 2014. They were Agile-ish, but they were on the leaderboards for AI. And I heard terms that I hadn't really been exposed to. And it was just mind-blowing how limited I was thinking in scope and scale, right, compared to what they're doing. AT&T is not the only one out there. There's lots of clients I've got that are cutting edge, with deploying multiple agents, all sorts of stuff. And it kind of got me thinking, what am I going to do about this? I invested in a lot of training, ended up going through some training with Steve as well, which was great. And what I've seen along the way in these classes is this aha moment. And what's interesting, I think about the 2024 Safe Government Conference, Steve was doing a half-day Safe micro-credential on AI. And I remember at my table, someone going, "You're cheating. You're cheating." And it's like this idea that AI is cheating. And, a couple of years ago, it shifted for me that, no, this is just makes sense. And when we think about how many people out there still view AI as cheating, as a hack, instead of it being just kind of how we work, right? And, as an individual, these are six of the areas that you'll want to lean into. And, like for me, you heard, Steve, what's the name of your AI friend at your house?
Alita.
Alita, right? Battle Angel, right? And for me,
Mhm.
for me, it's Chuck. Anyway, you end up with this kind of, collaborate with AI. I have as a small business guy, this is my team, right? And I've actually got other GPTs set up that are my advisors, right? Different people give me different things, and I'm collaborating with them. And so that's just one example here of kind of how much things have changed. And so I'm not gonna belabor this slide a lot, but that this isn't just for organizations. For you individually, there's a huge opportunity to lean into this. And when I hear about people worrying about the jobs, it's like, well, I'm more worried about not being able to leverage this amazing new technology, and becoming that AI native side of things. And so, when you look at this, it's about fluency. In our country, a lot of, we hear about a lot of extremes, right? How it's going to take over the world, or how it's horrible, all these things, and the real stuff is just the fact in the middle, when people start doing things differently. And it's funny, I did an LPM workshop last week for a healthcare company, and I was explaining to them that, how do you move to this new portfolio model? You solve a problem with these patterns and practices, and then what do you get to do? You solve another one. Solve another one. You look over your shoulder and you're like, oh, we've implemented LPM. It's the same way with AI, right? It's your daily practices. You learn to work effectively with these systems. So it's not about perfect prompts. It's not about replacing human judgment, because you always need human judgment. And you'll find that you get better and better at leveraging these things. And it's not even technical expertise. I am nowhere near as savvy as Steve and his team when it comes to, being able to build out things in Replit and create some amazing prompts. I'm dabbling. I'm proficient with my local LLM, and I'm starting to get into Hugging Face a bit. But my point being is that I'm never going to be this AI expert from a technology perspective, but I don't have to be effective helping my clients with their AI strategy. And that's the important thing here, is it's about fluency, right? Because that fluency is the new competitive advantage. That's what you want. If you can apply this, if you can bring it in there. So view AI as a teammate, not as a trend, right? Get that genuine fluency, augment it, combine the pattern recognition that you use today, and the processing speed of AI with that context, with that creativity, with that ethical reasoning that you have as a human, right? So confidence and curiosity, the willingness to experiment, learn from failures, continuously improve. Sound familiar, right? We've seen that with agility. And those organizations that leverage agility are ones that do just that: experiment, learn from failures, continuously, relentlessly improve.
So Phil, before
Yeah.
you move on from that slide, let me just, I love this phrase you put on here, breathless hype. And let me just double down on what you said here. And we are taking what I think of as a pragmatic approach to AI and what we're trying to do to help organizations. It is very easy to get wrapped up in who announced some big thing today, whether it's from OpenAI or from Anthropic, and then Google comes in, and then here comes Apple. I mean, you could get so overwhelmed chasing every new development. Let me encourage everybody, stay aware, but don't feel like you've got to run out and try every new tool, and be on that bleeding edge. You're probably not going to have a great experience with that. In our classes, we teach, the horizons of this technology. Focus on the stable things, the things that are working well, that are showing to prove value. Those bleeding edge things will come to you over time as they get proven out and the clear use cases emerge. So I just encourage everybody to take a breath, right? It's okay. You don't have to feel like you've got to chase every one of those things. They will evolve over time. Stay informed, stay interested, stay curious. But just start using the things that are easily accessible now. Build your learning, find practical in your business world, like truly beneficial from a work perspective, ways to improve your productivity and use this to augment yourself and your capabilities, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll move on to we'll talk about the 7 critical success factors in just a second. One thing that Steve said was interesting was, it just triggered a thought for me, is that many of you work inside an enterprise that has to make decisions to balance risk and capabilities. And, there may be a particular tool or platform you want to use, but your company is saying, hey, we're using this. I would encourage you to work within your system on what you can use there, because 80% of the stuff, you can get most of it out of any of these Gen AI tools, right? And so maybe there's something you can't do because you don't have this brand or that brand, but remember, your company's supplying this with you, and there's larger strategic reasons. And actually, I'm gonna not belabor that point. Let's just get into the success factors.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'll add to that, Phil, is if your company's approved tool doesn't have that feature, wait 5 minutes. Because I promise you, they're all chasing each other. And if one of them releases a feature that gets a lot of interest, everybody's going to be running to catch up, right? So we're seeing that every day in the tool that my company has selected. It's a horse race, and they're all right there, and the speed at which they are adding new capabilities is it's a little dizzying, to be honest. All right, now we can go on to success factors. Sorry, time to move on. So once we understand, so this is what's happening. AI is different. Got it. AI is creating these new forces that we have to deal with individually, in our profession, as well as our organization. Got it. What's the solution? We're going to become very capable and proficient so that AI and the use of AI becomes second nature to us, again, individually as well as our organization. Fantastic. Well, how do we do that? Right? So let's get to the practical things. So there are 7 patterns that we have found. I'm not saying that these are the only patterns in the world. These are the 7 most common ones we've been able to triangulate from our research, from conversations, with experts, with companies that are doing this well. So these are there's 7 of them. I've got a slide for each one. So I'm not going to talk about this slide, but just so you have a mental framing of these are the 7 patterns that we've seen emerge so far. So if we go to the next slide, we'll just walk through them quickly. So number 1, if these are all equal, there's not a sequence, but if there's any one that is sort of the first among equals in these 7, it's this. If you read the research reports that come out, every week, every other week from different organizations, you will see this theme over and over again. Organizations get, AI FOMO, fear of missing out, or the board told us we got to do something with AI, or, whatever their catalyst is. And somehow the business acumen goes flying out the window, and we just got to do something in AI. Well, that's not a great business strategy, folks. We should know that, right? We should understand what makes good business run. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to anchor, why are we doing something? Why are we making an investment? What are we trying to achieve? Connect it to the business strategy, connect it to the value you're trying to create. We're still in, whatever the business we're in. We're in the automotive business, or we're in the finance business, or the healthcare business. AI is a tool, and unless you're OpenAI or Anthropic or one of these companies, you're not in the AI business. You're in the business that you're in. So AI should serve that business, right? And we've got to keep that focus. I put this primarily at the feet of our executives and our leaders, right? They need to use their experience and their acumen to say, okay, We can make lots of different investments in AI, but which ones are going to advance our strategy, amplify our strategy, enable our strategy to be hyper successful in this competitive landscape in our industry? That's how the conversation should go, not we've got a piece of AI, let's find something to do with it. That's backwards. Okay. Next slide. Number 2, upskill relentlessly. We've talked about this already. AI is changing at just an unbelievable pace. We have to match that by saying we have to constantly learn. We have to constantly upskill individually, and the organization also has to understand that's part of having a successful AI native organization. Is there needs to be investment and commitment to making sure that your workforce is able to upskill. And that means you have to provide access to the tools, you have to provide access to the training that they need so that the workforce transforms into this AI native first, and they will bring that AI native mindset into whatever job they have, whether they're in HR, whether they're in accounting, whether they're in product development, whether they're in sales. It doesn't matter. They will all now be upskilled and empowered to apply AI to do their jobs better. That's on leaders to make sure they have that capability. But even us as individuals, if our organization hasn't quite gotten there yet, let's not use that as an excuse. There's way too much out there that's available that we can use right now to every day advance our ability to understand and use this technology, and we need to. Next slide. Start smart, include AI early. So this is that, let's build in, not add in later. So whether we're thinking about a new product, a new market, or just our, some part of our personal workflow, think of how can AI help me with this from the very beginning. Don't build the whole thing and then at the end say, well, can we throw AI in there somewhere? That's not going to end well, right? So that's what I was mentioning earlier. At some point, as you go down this journey, if you're not there already, the more you immerse yourself in your use of the technology, a point in time will come where that just happens. You don't force it to happen; it just occurs, where that just becomes how you think. Like, I got to do something. I've got to go. I need to find out. Oh gosh, what's an example? I saw a particular kind of shrubbery I thought might look good on my yard, but I didn't know what it was. Pointed my camera at it, took a picture, and asked AI, "What is this? And will it thrive in my area?" I didn't think about that; it just happened, right? That's what we're talking about on this success factor, and organizations can do that as well, but they have to have people in the organizations that think that way. Next slide. Move fast, learn fast. This is just a reminder: to be successful, you have to be ready to work at a speed. You have to be willing to change and adapt at a pace that, frankly, none of us have seen in our lifetimes, and you have to be okay with it, right? You have to build in the practices, the systems to say, yeah, that's the way the world looked last week, but it looks different this week. That's okay. I have equipped myself to learn and adapt quickly. And our organization is equipped itself to learn and adapt quickly. That's going to separate the successful from the unsuccessful. And that's the world we now live in. So if, we have many conversations in my leadership days and organizational change work on change fatigue and, gosh, can we just slow down on all the change? You're gonna have to shift that mindset, because AI is not slowing down for anybody. So, we can ride the wave or, have it ride over us. Next slide. Provide context for AI. This is something that we find, early on in people's journey, they may not fully appreciate. And we build this into the training that we do, so they experience this firsthand in both foundations and change agents and the other courses we'll do in the future. Is just having the generic tools by themselves off the shelf give you a lot of capability, and it's cool and it's great. The real power comes from providing the specific context of your organization or your work to the tool, and then combining its power with your unique context to really make what it can help you with very useful, very pragmatic, very successful. Now, you have to do that safely. We need to understand why AI is unique and has unique risks. So we don't want to become one of those stories in the news where some company leaked all of its private secrets because they didn't know how to use AI properly. So, use responsible AI, but when you build the capabilities to bring your context into your AI tools, that's where the power comes. So if you don't know how to do that yet, if you don't know how to build custom GPTs and upload documents and use context in your conversations, learn how to do that. You'll be amazed at how it changes your use of AI. Next slide. Embed it into the everyday. I mentioned, finding the shrub. You just becomes, don't think we have to do a big thing in order to use AI. That's kind of the point of this success factor. Even the small things, because if you add up all the small things, every little small use of AI that you use or your organization uses teaches you something. It builds an understanding, a capability, a mastery. And over time, you add up all those small things and it becomes big things. So, every single day, whatever it is that you have in front of you, start your day by asking, what do I have to do today? Even if it's, I got to put together a shopping list for what we're going to eat this week. Cool. Ask yourself, how would AI help me do that? Now, maybe it'll be something great. Maybe it'll be something, that didn't work out so hot, but that's okay. Right? It's the process of retraining the brain to think about integrating AI into everything we do. Next slide, please. Number 7, last but not least. Innovate boldly, govern wisely. We have to always manage this tension between, wow, it's providing amazing capabilities. Oh my gosh, I never imagined we could do this. And that's cool. And we need to take advantage of that because I promise our competitors are. But at the same time, we also have to understand the unique risks. We have to understand, how to use our business smarts to invest in the right places, to measure and determine whether or not it's actually getting a return on investment. So be willing to be bold, innovate, but let's also use our smarts on wise governance and how AI is unique and needs to be managed uniquely.
Let's talk a little bit about where do we go from here, right? So we've talked about this idea of AI native enterprise, AI native organizations, AI native professionals. And when we look at actually building that workforce, right? Teams, collaboration, shared workflows, we're seeing a pattern emerge where agile teams have an AI teammate. And it's interesting to kind of see that, fun names and things like that. A couple of my clients have that, and it's kind of been where they've got a custom GPT or something similar from another company that's their AI teammate, and it's an agent, or they have multiple agents that are on their agile team. We're seeing the professionals, the fluency going into the team, going into the enterprise. And when we think about this, we want our workforce to have these capabilities, not just the data scientists, not just the technologists. We want this to be across the board. And so part of this is that, in that Becoming AI Native white paper that Steve and team have created, it talks about, upskilling relentlessly. It talks about, the pace of AI and that skills gap and that need for continuous learning. One of the things that I remember from reading in there was by continuously learning and doing, you keep a line with each breakthrough. And in an AI native company, everyone from interns to senior execs have to continuously expand their AI knowledge and skills. And that's what ends up happening is the organization itself becomes this self-powered learning community because you're telling each other, oh, check this out. Oh, check this out, right? And so instead of having to be you individually going and looking for this, and so maybe you have an AI community of practice, but as an individual, commit to growing alongside your AI, right? Don't see it as a threat. See it as a chance to expand your own capability. It is a force multiplier for skilled individuals. That I have just seen that over and over and over again. you know, and for teams, having those communities for organizations. Now, there are these classes that Scaled Agile's come out with. And for me, I've been doing this for a while, not by any means a Dr. Steve here, but I went through this class in August. So Scaled Agile has two new classes, the AI Native Foundations and the AI Native Change Agent. And some of us, I don't know how many people they were, but there were a group of individuals around the globe that went in early to become these AI-enabled trainers. And I was lucky enough to be part of that group. And in that group, I'm sitting in this room with 15, 14, 15 other people. There's another safe fellow in there. And the rest of them were, almost all of them were SPCTs. So kind of the most experienced of the Scaled Agile people out there, all accomplished trainers. And at the table I was at, 3 of the 5 people experienced this epiphany during the first day of AI Foundations. It was this whole idea of, I've been thinking about this all wrong. And you just watch that wow moment. So I'm pumped about teaching. I love teaching classes where you see that light come on. And so I'm looking forward to teaching the AI Foundations again and again, because you see that. I sent people to Steve's class and the classes that were at the summit. Some of my clients went there and they took classes because it was available right there as part of the summit. And those individuals, you hear this buzz. It's like, oh, I was thinking about this all wrong, right? And it demystifies things. And so if you're at that point in your journey and you're interested in learning more about, how do you make that shift? I personally view the AI Foundations class as an accelerant. And I mean, you come out of there having created agents. I mean, it's, I don't want to, this isn't a webinar to sell a class, but I will tell you that there are classes that are transformative. And what I love about that class is that you come out of there with stuff you'll apply immediately. You've already started applying it in the class, and it was masterful. And I'm going to brag on Steve here a little bit. I saw you weren't about, let me collect all this information. You created an experience that created that change in individuals. And that's what that class is. Now, the AI Native Change Agent class is one that's designed to, if you're a person who's going to be looking at how do we get our enterprise to look at some of these factors to actually, move towards where you're advising the enterprise or the organization on AI strategy and on how to effectively leverage AI. That's what that second class is all about. But ultimately, these are a couple pieces that make it part of your culture. I geek out on some of the classes. Anyway, so where do you start, right? There's 3 actionable places you can start, right? Include AI early. Treat it as a founding partner, not an execution tool. Every opportunity, every initiative, ask yourself how AI can help. I did a talk on Shark Tank and LPM at the summit a few weeks ago, and I'm going to be presenting it at a meetup in November, and I've already overhauled it. And because now, when I look at an epic hypothesis statement, I actually want to understand there's an area on there for what's the AI strategy for this, because to me, it's so important for when you're exploring opportunities out there, right? And asking yourself, how can AI help? You want to ask that question across the board, right? It needs to be built into the guardrails. We want that literally integrated into the operating rhythms. We have to have that in there, and it's like, starting smart. And of course, upskill relentlessly, which Steve's already talked about a little bit, and embedding it into the everyday, right? It's retrospectives, which we're seeing Scaled Agile updating their classes incrementally now to include AI in product management. There's a bunch of safe skills out there for AI in the different roles. And that's just scratching the surface. You can actually share your GPTs. You can collaborate within AI as well. And so, we want to include that early inclusion and that continuous learning. I will give you a cautionary tale, which is, I've got clients out there, not a lot of them. I've got one client I'm thinking about particularly that they're so heavily restricted that they're kind of frozen with their AI implementation. And it's if you think about the force multiplier of having an AI enabled workforce, their competitors are going to be able to get to market faster with more innovative, more hardened things in the future if and they're going to get left behind. We saw what happened with Carlota Perez, some of the companies that don't make it. And I really do believe that AI is one of those things where you've got to invest in starting it. And so when we look at getting going, I'm just going to turn over to Steve here to kind of talk about, what are some things to get you ready, and then we'll get into our Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I'll do this quickly because I want to have some time for questions. But in the white paper, and then we reinforce it in both of the 2 classes we built so far, more coming, but we've got 2 out there now, is how individually and even organizationally, how are we positioned for this journey? And so there's 4 things to think about that we would suggest. This is mostly for organizations, but you can apply it personally as well. And the first one is, look at how your organization is positioned, not just in, gosh, do we have the right tools and tool stacks? Where is our leadership competency? We're going to need that. Where's our culture? We talk a lot about culture in this space, and it becomes really important in terms of, what's the, where's the human and where's the technology, and are we managing that correctly? Skills, governance, technology. So, 5 different surface areas for us to look at and say, how are we ready to begin this journey? That journey is going to go in stages, right? If you're at the very, very beginning, you are not going to jump from novice to expert overnight. There's a series of exploring and emerging and scaling and embedding. That's a natural sort of life cycle as our capabilities and competencies get better and better and better. We'll be able to leverage more, but just understand that is a process, and there really aren't any good shortcuts. Understanding the use cases. Be intentional. Don't just sling AI on the wall and see if something sticks. I haven't really seen much of any evidence that works out well. So think about the business. Think about what we're going to apply AI to and why. What we're hoping to get out of that. And why is AI the right choice, and how will we measure it and know? And so be intentional about that. And then, know what the outcomes are. Focus on outcomes, not outputs. And make sure those outcomes are aligned to the business, as I mentioned earlier. So these are the 4 kind of things that we would recommend to an organization as they move down the path to that model that I showed earlier that will help us frame the beginning of the journey.
Okay. So just a quick note here from Matt at Engage Agility. If you want to look into these classes, Matt is doing this. He has a code out there, basically $200 off any course. And there's also these premier bundles where you bundle Foundations and Change Agent together. And there's you can get to the calendar with that QR code. With that said, I'm not going to spend more time on this. We do have our questions here, so I'm going to answer. We've got 8 questions here. If you have more, we can add them in. First one here, I just saw this pop up here. Kind of given a safe cert metaphor, Foundations is Foundations safe practitioner and Change Agent, safe agilist. I would say, please don't think of the new AI classes in the terms of the safe lens. In fact, I would. My personal take is, having been involved in the beginning of Scaled Agile, early adopter of Scaled Agile, the AI work from Scaled Agile feels a lot like that. The difference is, and this is my personal opinion, is they're leveraging the history they have with Scaled Agile and rolling the framework out now, and kind of course correcting. So for example, these classes are all available in person only. They're not remote online classes. Secondly, in order to teach the class, you have to experience the class. So no more just enable for a couple hours. You actually have to experience the course. And then Scaled Agile is the certifying body. If you want to train these classes, you need to go through with Scaled Agile and get enabled there. So it's going to ensure a different dynamic there. Now, as far as positioning these classes, think about the AI native Foundations as the one that basically gets all of your people to be AI native. Everybody who goes through there is good, in my personal opinion, is going to come out of there with something they can learn and add. Even the individuals that I've seen, that I've talked to, that I know are AI savvy, they still come out of there learning something because they learn from their peers. So it's definitely something where it's almost like a movement to me, right? Where it's like I'm envisioning the ability to go in there and have 300, 400 people in the organization go through this, and now all of a sudden it's just how they work. That's how I used Leading Safe at AT&T years ago. We didn't launch an agile release train, but we trained 350 of our 400 people in Leading Safe, and it changed our culture. That's kind of how I would position the Foundations one. Change Agent is more specific, and it's designed to be, how do we effectively apply this at an organizational scale?
That kind of connects to another question that was in there about why Scaled Agile. I think both these two are connected.
Okay.
So I think Phil, you did a great job describing it. What I've encouraged everybody to think of, Scaled Agile, the company, now for the first time in our history, owns two brands, two lines of business. We're taking everything that we learned, over a dozen years in building the Scaled Agile framework in that business. We're taking all of the good lessons learned, as well as some things that, honestly, we probably should have done differently. And we're taking that learning and we're applying it to building this new business. So you will see some things that might look familiar because they work, and you're going to see some things that are decidedly different because either we would have done it differently or this domain just demands something different. So just be comfortable with some things you'll be familiar with, some things we'll have to learn, some things new, because we're not just going to assume we're going to do everything in the AI business exactly the way we did with the SAFe business. But the benefit of Scaled Agile getting into this space is we've built an amazing global community, over 2 million people trained, 20,000 organizations that use our stuff, a cadre of 20,000 change agents that are proficient at making sense out of complexity and coaching and training. Those are capabilities, quite honestly, that most of the people providing AI training out there in the world don't have. This global network of 400 plus partners that can you can connect with in your locality. So they're distinctive advantages. We're going to leverage all of those strengths, but we're also going to do some things differently. So fasten your seatbelt.
Absolutely. Looking at the questions here. So I don't, one person here, I was going to type it in, but I accidentally hit the button to answer live. So I'm going to say this real quick. So no classes listed in Los Angeles. So this is an emerging market. And because it is in person, it's hard to get a class up and running, right? Email Matt at Engaged Agility. If there's interest in a location, I'm open to it. It's been a while since I was out in El Segundo working with the Space and Missile Systems Center, did that for a couple of years. But absolutely, send an email to Matt at Engaged Agility, and we can look into that. All right, so how do we, let's see, is it possible to tell the difference between Gen AI output and something someone has created on their own? Are there patterns baked into Gen AI output so we can check for human originality? Absolutely, but here's my question for you, and I'll let Steve chime in on this as well. Does it matter? So I'll tell you, 2 years ago when I was blogging, and I would go in there and I would scrub my blog to get rid of the EM dashes. And last couple of months, I'm like, does it really matter, right? So yes, there are patterns. There's tools out there, but I can tell you, you can sanitize. You can go through and have your Gen AI remove those tells from your content if you chose to do so. So it's not going to be infallible. Steve, anything you'd?
Yeah, I think you defined it well. I think it's also the mindset of how we use it. And there are some other questions that relate to this as well. If you're in the camp of people who just say, well, I'm going to use AI to keep me from having to work or think, then it's kind of buyer beware. They may not end well for you. I never do that. I use AI to amplify and augment my own abilities, and I don't just turn over things. So yes, it certainly gets me faster down the road in whatever work that I'm doing. But there will be things that I don't agree with, I would have done differently. I don't belabor trying to make the tool do what I need it to do. I'll let it do 80% and I'll do the last 20%. I still saved 80% time. That's value. I can take that 80% and apply it elsewhere. I think your point, Phil, was focus on the output. If it's a, if it's a well-written article, then our goal is to do a well-written article. And if it's valuable, and that's great. The other thing I would just say, there's also sort of a moral and ethical question here that is important, at least to me. Hopefully it is to everybody here too, and that is, you take something that the technology created and go out into the world and claim you did it. Hopefully none of us are doing that. That's the other sort of dimension to that question.
So I know we're at our time box. I just want to let everybody know that for these questions that were unanswered, we'll type up answers for them and make those available as part of the recording. There is one last one on here on Steve, just for your take. The overlap between AI native foundations and Change Agent, to me, it's minimal, but you're the expert, so I figured I'd.
Definitely. So this is one of those areas where you might see a difference if you're a deeply experienced SAFe person, and you went through leading SAFe and then you went through implementing SAFe, and you see a lot of the leading SAFe content in implementing SAFe, and there's a reason for that. It's not a mistake, it's just a decision. We made a different decision to do it differently on the AI native side, and that is we're not going to repeat the same foundations information again in Change Agent. And that's why one is a prerequisite for the other, is because we made that decision.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. The recording will be available as well as the deck. And Dr. Maynard, thank you so much for your time and energy and all you do. All right.
I appreciate the opportunity and your partnership, Phil.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.